It is It is a distinct pleasure to welcome you guys this morning to hear Jack Pine. Jack is from my neck of the woods down in Texas, where he has worked both in the Houston Zoo and in other private animal collections. Currently he's at Blessington Farms, LLC, which is a sort of a theme park kind of a place, and a pick-your-own berry farm, where he does amazing work, where he has expanded the collection there from just chickens to a virtual safari of different animals. He has been an enormous help to me in the work that we do at Parrot Festival down in Houston every year. He is innovative, knowledgeable, passionate, and very, he doesn't want anyone to know this, but very, very kind. And so I'm sure that everything that you hear him say today will be interesting and informative, and it is my pleasure to introduce Jack Pine.
Okay, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to warn you guys right now, I am still recovering from sinus surgery, so we are really, really hoping that my voice is going to be able to make it through the whole time. It'll work. Okay, so this presentation, Feather Touch Aviculture. Basically, this is the idea of figuring out what is the lightest touch you can use to manage your avian collection. And whether or not you think you do, every single person in here who has a bird has an avian collection. If you have one bird, you just have a very, very discriminating, well-curated collection, but it's still a collection. So before we get into that, let me just tell you a little bit more about me. If you've never seen me before, first of all, you're probably living a much more peaceful life. I do bring a little bit of chaos to everything that I do, but it's in a fun way. So I am an animal caretaker. I have worked with a wide variety of animal species, everything from budgies to Asian elephants, and everything in between. So here we've got some of the photos of things that I'm really, really happy about. This is one of the few presentations where I did not post the photo of me holding a critically endangered red-crowned crane chick, because I think everybody's seen that maybe 1 too many times. But still, some of the other fun things that I've really worked with. Like Danny was saying, I am currently the animal curator at Blessington Farms. Blessington Farms is a facility designed to get children interested in being outside. So all of our animal encounters are going to be designed to get children asking questions about animals, how to interact with their animals. Any produce we're growing, and we grow strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, all sorts of mixed greens. The main approach for them, again, is to get kids interested in how do plants grow, how do we harvest them. So in that capacity, I have to do quite a bit. I'm actually probably the truest definition of a generalist when it comes to being an animal caretaker that you will ever find, because I do not specialize in just one type of animal. We have dairy goats, we have parrots, we have reptiles. And I am not just the person taking care of them on a daily basis. I am also the person writing the educational programming that we use to present to kids. I am the person going in and building their enclosures. So when you have that well-rounded approach where you're having to do everything yourself, you have to think about what are the ways to make it easier, more efficient, less stressful on the animals. So one question we need to ask ourselves today is, why are we even here? Why are we in this presentation? And the answer can't just be because you paid for your AFA conference, you gotta do something with it. Although, plug that I'm pretty sure Mary Ellen's gonna owe me $20 after the presentation for this. If you come to the AFA conference, if you're not able to come to the AFA conference, but you sign up to do the virtual sessions, if you're not able to do that, but you're able to sign up for an AFA membership, all of that is going to go towards promoting educational events that get people information to to take care of their birds. It's going to go towards conservation efforts. It's going to go towards legislative efforts to make sure that we are all able to continue to take care of the birds that we care about. So I strongly encourage you guys to support the American Federation of Aviculture. You're already here at the conference, so that's definitely a really good start. So what is the point of this presentation? Aviculture is taking care of birds. Big surprise. The issue with taking care of birds is that many of them can be very, very skittish. They can be a little bit prone to stress, which can present a wide variety of different health issues. Birds that are excessively stressed can be prone to things like parasites, bacterial and viral infections, fungal infections, and just general disease. And that's, of course, if you are able to get past your bird is so stressed that it falls over dead, which is something that can happen as well. It is in our best interest to manage that stress to the best of our ability. Not only is it going to help you avoid unnecessary loss if you can manage that stress, it's going to help you avoid unnecessary strain. I don't know about you guys, but if I have a bird that isn't doing well, if I'm worried about it, if I'm having to treat it for medical conditions, avoidable medical conditions, not only is that a lot of stress on that bird, that's a lot of stress on me as well. So that's definitely something that we can look to avoid. So the things that I'm going to talk about today, will these things always work? No, they are not always going to work for you. They are not always going to work for your collection. And the things that we are going to talk about today are going to cover a variety of different scenarios. All of these things can't work together. You can't hand train, work with a bird every single day, and also have a hands-off breeding pair of birds and treat them the exact same way. It just isn't going to work. So we're going to cover a variety of different topics, and you guys will need to use your best judgment for what is applicable for your collection. And always, always, always prioritize the safety and the well-being of your individual birds. I am not telling anyone this is the way that you have to do things with your birds. But I do have things that I have seen that work. I have things that could work for your collection. But it's up to you ultimately to recognize, can you implement that in a way that is successful for your birds? So I wanted to cover this with basically the timeline of how most people get into birds. So usually we all start with maybe one caged bird that we're really, really interested in, we're really excited about. So you want to work with that. There's a bird in there.
It's the speaker on the. Somebody's not muted.
Somebody on the live, on the Zoom live feed has their microphone on. Can you turn it off? Yes, we'll get that on. And then if you mute, I think Connie knows how to do it. Connie or Taylor.
Go to your participant. Go for it, Jack.
Yep, you go. And then at the bottom, you go. And then uncheck that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yesterday that worked.
Perfect. You got it, Jack.
Okay, where's my food reinforcer? That was a big task. So, what behavior should we be working on? We're going to look at this from the idea of starting with, your first bird. When you first get a pet parrot, the training that you would want to do with that. Maybe if you really like working with that bird, you're going to maybe get another one, or you're going to want to take that bird to schools, to libraries, try to educate people about that bird. Maybe you're going to want to set up some breeding groups of birds, and then eventually you will be like me and just complete the descent into madness and do all of the above, usually at the same time. So, looking at a pet bird, the things that we want to start talking about with basic behaviors, it's going to depend. It's going to depend on your individual bird, where you are starting, if your bird has any behaviors that they're already doing, if you already have a relationship with that bird. All of that is going to have an impact on what you want to work with. And all of these behaviors aren't necessarily going to work for your bird. We're going to go into that in detail on some of these behaviors, things that you'll need to do to modify them. This is one of those things, at the end of the day, if your bird doesn't do what the bird down the street does, if your bird doesn't step up what you determine to be the right way, if your bird doesn't talk, that's going to be a big sticking point for a lot of people. They want a bird that talks. If your bird doesn't do anything that you view is possibly the right way, I just want you guys to remember that at the end of the day, you have a wonderful, intelligent dinosaur living in your house. So focus on that, move forward. You can definitely shape, modify any of these behaviors to be appropriate for that dinosaur. And if we're talking about things like breeding behaviors, breeding birds, you usually want to be a little more standoffish with them. If we're talking about things like small passerine birds that are going to be a little bit more prone to stress, you may not want to be working on behaviors at all. Instead, you may want to work on practical setup, changing things so that it is easy, it is stress-free. This is one of the things where I will get into a little bit of conflict with some other animal trainers, because animal trainers we can always train your animal to do anything. The question is how much work is going to go into it and how much time you're willing to commit on a regular basis. The fact of the matter is not everything needs to be trained. Sometimes by having a plan and an approach that is thoroughly thought out, you can avoid that need for training. A practical solution works a lot of the time. But if you have a pet, the basic behaviors that you want to take a look at that are going to make bird keeping a whole lot easier. Target training. Target training is a wonderful behavior, not just for birds, for pretty much any animal that you are going to work with. I'm going to be perfectly honest, I target trained my nephew. It was wonderful. Step up, step down training. It's a really good way to just move your animal around. There's a bunch of different ways to approach that. Station training, training your animal to go and stay in a particular spot. Scale training, getting a weight on your bird, especially for birds, that's going to be one of the best ways to ensure you are taking optimum care of that bird, because that gives you a snapshot into that bird's individual health on any given basis. Crate training is training your bird to go into a crate. The names of training is, it's very mysterious, I know. Towel training, training your bird for restraint. Typically what you're going to see when you go to a vet clinic, if they're having to do things with your bird, being able to restrain the bird minimizes the stress on them. It lets the vet get in, get what they need to do done quickly, and then leave that bird alone as quickly as possible. So it's definitely useful. But by training it, you can make it even less stressful on your bird. So if anyone is not familiar with training, we're going to do a really, really quick overview. The ABCs of training is probably the easiest way to take a look at it. There is a science and then there is an art form to animal training. The ABCs of training covers the science of animal training. So ABC, there are 3 things you want to look at. An antecedent is something that happens before a behavior. A behavior is something that happens. And a consequence is what happens after a behavior. Now, if you look at this from a training standpoint, it could be the antecedent is your cue. The behavior is what you want that animal to do, and the consequence, which I know a lot of people think that consequence has a negative connotation, but it's just what happens afterward. If you give your animal a food reinforcer that they're really, really excited about, that is the consequence in that instance. And it's a good consequence, but that is what happens afterward. Now, if you are not actively training, or rather if you don't think you are actively training your bird, you are still training your bird. All of these things are still happening, whether or not you are paying attention to them. So that is just something that you want to keep in mind. That basic science, that basic approach is going to be applicable to any behavior you're looking at with an animal. Now, when we start talking about the art form of animal training, you're going to have to modify your approaches to your individual animals. And I thought of a wonderful way to make this very, very simple. So, I'm gonna train a behavior right now. And because you are all people and can understand me, I can fully explain this and it'll be done very, very quickly, which is something I know a lot of us wish we could do with all of our other animals. So, I need someone to answer a question. So the cue is I am going to ask you a question, the behavior I want, you are going to answer the question, and then you get a food, if I can, yes. Then you get a food reinforcer. This should probably be your note. If you are training your animals, make sure you have your reinforcers readily available. Setting up your training, fixing your training setup definitely helps you. So, Danny, does that sound good to you?
Sure.
Awesome, you get a treat.
Nope.
Then maybe you shouldn't lob them at your animal's head. Look at his face, he's still excited about it. Susanna, does that sound good to you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we might have run into a little bit of problem. We did the exact same behavior, the exact same cue. They got the exact same reinforcer. They both got a Slim Jim. Problem is Susanna doesn't eat meat. Is that reinforcer going to work the same way for both of them? No. So take a look at your individual animal. Take a look at how you're doing your training setup. Modify it for their needs. One thing I cannot stress enough, you're going to see it throughout this presentation, record your training sessions. When you record your training sessions, you can see how you're interacting with your animal, how your animal is interacting with you. It definitely helps you know how you want to progress and move forward. So, target training. Target training is going to be one of the simplest behaviors to work on with an animal, and it is basically training them to touch something. And you can modify this however you want it. So in this instance, I have, that is Widget, my green-cheeked conure. I'd say 90% of the time, he is my favorite little dinosaur. 10% of the time, he is an aggravating butthead, which I think is probably a pretty good ratio. He's a lot of fun to work with. Target training, you can train your bird to touch their beak. You can train them to touch with their foot. You can modify it however you want. There I'm using a target stick that I made with a bead and a chopstick, but there are plenty of people who will target using their finger. Train your bird to touch the tip of your finger. For a bigger bird, train them to touch maybe a closed fist. For a bird like Widget, that would work really, really well. If you have a bird that's a little bit skittish of you, maybe a little bit aggressive, they have a poor history, you may not want to give them your finger when you don't have that great a training history with them. So again, just change it up as you need. But how you choose to target train that bird is completely up to you. And target training can be done free contact or protected contact. So this is one of those things, a lot of people get a bird and they think, I want to get the bird and I'm going to go pick up the bird and I'm going to do all these things with these birds because I've seen people online and the birds climb all over them and they do flips and they fly around the room. If you are a brand new pet owner, if you do not have that history, if your bird does not have that history, or it's maybe even got a negative history, if it got bounced around to a couple of homes before you got it, you may need to build that relationship. So target training inside their cage, having them target through the cage bars is going to be a really, really safe way for you to do that. And for your bird, they're going to view that as a really safe way for them to interact with you as well. So it works both ways. And it is one of the best ways to communicate information to your bird. Once your bird is target trained, once any animal you have is target trained, you can train them to do so many of the other behaviors that you are about to see. Target training, my nephew taught him then how to climb into a laundry basket. So it's definitely going to be usable. So the next thing we're going to talk about is step up, step down training, because that's usually going to be the next thing that people want to do with their bird. They can feel that connection with their bird, and I am going to hope that I did everything right with the audio for this, because I'm just going to talk over this video. All right, so there I have an umbrella cockatoo. His name is Grayson. I use him for a lot of the presentations that I do for kids. He's a great bird. He is really, really well socialized. He can go to so many different places and he's fine. So there you see, I am step up training him. I train him to go up on my hand. But if you're concerned about having your bird step up on your hand. Maybe you want to have them step up onto a perch. Maybe you want to have them step up, not onto your hand, but your forearm. I have a bird that has a scissor beak that he does not do as well with stepping up on my hand. He wants to step up onto my forearm. And since he has a little bit more difficulty grabbing onto things if he feels insecure, having that ability to go on my forearm makes him more comfortable. It makes him more willing to participate. One thing I'm going to encourage you, I have lumped the two together. If you do step up training with your bird, please also train your bird to step down. I have seen so many birds that step up and they go to your hand and then they run to your shoulder and then they are in charge and you can't tell them anything. So having the ability to get them to step up, to step down onto a table, a perch, back into their cage. That step down is going to be another part of that training. Some birds are going to want to go forward, some are going to want to go back. There are modifications that you can make there as well. But you can see with Grayson there, I gesture a lot. I work with kids, so I need to be big and exciting. So one of the things I've actually had to desensitize that bird for is me moving and being very, very big and exciting. And at this point, he's just like, oh, what's going on? We're talking. Okay, I like talking. But it did not start that way. Out of all the videos we're going to show you guys, they're all going to be less than a minute. They did not all happen in less than a minute. So please don't have the expectation of, well, he came and he showed us 4 minutes of video and that bird went from, feral dinosaur to doing algebra. That's not going to happen. That's not how it works. These are going to be the result of daily short training sessions, watching the animals, seeing how they're interacting. I said next. There we go. So the things that you want to know with step up and step down training, again, some are going to want to go forward, some are going to want to go back. Use your bird's body language. You can gauge to see what they are comfortable with. Same thing for, I have birds that are not comfortable around hands, but they love interacting with people. I have a rose-breasted cockatoo that for some reason does not like hands. I've actually got her, she's trained to just fly to my forearm. That works really, really well, but again, it all depends on the individual bird. Some will prefer to step up onto a perch. When you get to that note, some are going to want to step up on very particular perches. Some might want to step up onto a wooden perch. Some might want to step up onto a rope buoying. So I'm going to say this again and again and again. Do what works best for you and your bird. And if your bird doesn't step up, birds can still be managed even if they don't step up. Like that rose-breasted macaw that doesn't want to step up directly onto my hand, she's trained to fly to my forearm. Using that target training, if you need to move your bird around and they don't want to step up for you, you can still target them, to move them around, to get them to different places that you want them to be. That's going to be the approach that zoos use with things like elephants and tigers. You don't go in with the tiger and have the tiger step up onto your arm, or you might, but only once. Instead, you target them. You get them to move from one shift cage to the other. You're able to get that information to them. You're able to get them to move where you want them to, but it's just changing that approach. Station training. Station training is going to be a really, really easy thing to do. For some people, they'll say that it maybe isn't even necessarily that important, but there are a lot of applications that you can use it for. So station training is training your bird to go to and stay in a particular spot. So here I've actually got a basic tabletop PVC stand that I built for this bird. I absolutely love these little tabletop stands because they weigh next to nothing. I can pick them up, I can put them on different tables in different rooms. I can train the bird to step up and go there. The first part is training the bird to go to that spot. The second part is building duration, training the bird to stay in that spot. That's going to be one of the things that doesn't happen overnight. You're going to have to slowly build that up. But doing this gives you a lot of different things. First of all, if your bird is comfortable on that station, with a bird like Grayson, when I take him to places like libraries, different auditoriums, places where he's not familiar with his surroundings, that station gives him something that he is comfortable with. It makes him a lot more at ease with his surroundings because that's something that he's used to. That is his, you know, emotional support, perch. No, why are we not doing that right? There we go. So you just want to make sure that you plan your station training in a way that is going to be most useful for you. I use those PVC stands, but it doesn't have to be a PVC stand. You can have a piece of foam that your bird or your animal is trained to go to. For dogs, one of my favorite things to use for dogs is those really, really flat frisbees, because I can just set those on the ground and the dogs know to go there, to sit there, and they have that. If you have multiple birds, if you have multiple dogs, if you have multiple of any animal and you want to try to work with them together, one of the really, really fun things that you can do with them is using color-coded stations. Get them used to. Grayson goes to always either a blue or a black station. Mika goes to a red station. Mika's the umbrella cockatoo with the scissor beak that I was telling you about. If I have them out together, they go to their individual stations. So it works really, really well. They have that space. I've done it with dogs with different colored frisbees, and I know a lot of people have said dogs don't have that same color vision, they can't figure it out. They can. It works really, really well. It's a great thing. It's definitely something to at least think about if you have multiple birds. Scale training is going to be one of the things that I cannot emphasize enough. This should definitely be one of the main goals that you have with your birds. Getting a regular weight on your birds is going to give you a snapshot into their individual health. Now, because I've already station trained this bird for this PVC stand, and because I built the PVC stand myself, it is custom fitted to fit completely on that scale that I am using. So by training the bird, by training the bird to step onto the station platform, I have already pretty much trained them to go onto the scale. Now, of course, it's not quite that simple, because you can see our scale has a reed bar up on the top as well, and that was very, very terrifying for a few days. But it does have a reed on the bottom as well, getting the bird used to that. But again, step up onto this station while it is on the scale. I have my bird's weight. For birds especially, scale training is going to be a really important thing, because birds don't show signs of illness usually until it's too late. Scale training gives you your bird's weight, which is objective. There's a lot of things that go into taking care of animals, taking care of birds especially. If your bird, I don't think it's eating as much today, or I don't think it looks right. I think it maybe is holding itself a little bit weird. Those are all going to be valid observations, but those are subjective observations. It really depends on the person that's looking at them. It depends on what they saw the day before. Weight is an objective observation. I know this for a fact. Every single time I go to the doctor's office, I cannot lie about the numbers that show up on the scale. I can't interpret them some other way. That is unfortunately how much I weigh. So that is a thing that just gives you a really, really good objective piece of information for your bird. But it's only going to be useful if you use it regularly and consistently. Because what you're going to be looking for with scale training is a change in your bird's weight. If they're dropping weight, that could be a problem. If they're rapidly gaining weight, that could be a problem. But how much of a problem really depends on, did you get your bird's weight a week ago and they've gained 40 grams in a week? Or did you get your bird's weight a year ago and they gained 40 grams some point in that year? You're definitely looking at different criteria there. The other thing is, you want to make sure you're using it consistently. If you get your bird's weight before they have breakfast every single day, and then one day you decide, oh, okay, well, here, I already fed you, but I want to get your weight. Let me get your weight. Oh, no, my bird gained 25 grams. Yeah, you fed it. You might be concerned about that, but that's just your bird had food. So there's nothing that says you have to get your bird's weight at 5:12 a.m. every single day. But you just want to make sure that you're using it in a way where that information is going to be the most useful to you. And just modify it as needed. One really fun thing to do, if you have a setup like I do where I have that perch directly centered over the scale, and this is probably going to be something that people are like, no, we don't do that. Have the station platform on there, have the paper towel on there, have your bird step up on the scale, wait for them to poop, take the bird off of the scale, and then you also have the weight of the fecal that they had that morning, which may not be something that most people are interested in, but if you have a bird that is maybe gaining or dropping weight, if they're having issues with their digestive system, your vet can be very, very appreciative of that information, because if you're getting very, very small or very, very large fecals, that can be something that can help your vet diagnose what's going on with your bird. And for most people, I understand you are probably not going to be that excited about poop, and that is completely fine too. Crate training, and I hope this shows up decently in this video. Crate training is basically training your bird to go into a travel carrier. Now, because I have a variety of different birds, I custom build all of their travel carriers because I have to accommodate things like moving multiple birds in different vehicles. So this crate that I built for him is actually within ½ an inch of clearance to fit within the door of a Kia Rio. So that was the struggle that I had to set up with this bird. So he goes into the bird, or into the crate, he steps down, we close the door. You'll notice I did not slam the door. Please do not slam the door if you are crate training your bird. You will get the bird to go into the crate once and then never again, because the world exploded and there was this flash of noise and excitement. But getting your bird to go into a crate means that you can evacuate them if necessary. For me, we're on the Gulf Coast. We have a lot of issues with flooding, hurricanes. Sometimes I have, just a day or two notice to evacuate a collection that is about 300 different animals. If I had to go through and towel train or grab up birds with nets and towel them and put them into carriers, it would take a lot more time than having a bird that knows how to step up, step down into a crate. If I need to bring a bird to a veterinarian, having them trained to go into their crate minimizes the stress on them, which going to the veterinarian is already going to be stressful. Let's do what we can to minimize that stress. But a couple of things you want to keep in mind for crate training. You want to make sure your crate is easy to access. If your crate is up in the attic, you are never going to work with training your bird to go into a crate. So having it nearby, having it somewhere your bird can see it, they're familiar with it, is definitely going to help you when it comes to crate training your birds. And your travel crate should be able to fully accommodate your bird for an adequate amount of time. The reason I phrase it that way is this is, again, one of those things where it depends on your bird, your situation. The crate that you are going to need to bring a budgie 10 minutes away to the vet is not going to be the same thing as a crate that you need to go on a 1-week trip with a macaw. The crate that you need to take a macaw on a 10-minute trip to the vet is not the crate that you need for a 1-week excursion with your bird. So think about what's going to be needed for your bird in terms of perching, food, water, enrichment, what your bird needs over whatever period of time you are planning, and plan your travel crate accordingly. Towel training. This is actually one of my favorite videos that I've ever gotten. Again, this did not all happen in the span of about 30 seconds, but I knew I wanted to get a video of it, and this is one of the times where usually when you train animals, you have good sessions, you have some sessions where it's like, that wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it's going to work. And then you have some sessions where, oh my God, you did everything I wanted perfectly and beyond. And that's actually what this video is here. So Widget, my green cheek conure, have actually been raising him. His parents stopped raising him, stopped feeding him by about day 2. So I've been hand feeding that bird since he looked like a piece of mold, to be honest. So with him, I start with playing a game called Squish the Bird. I'm not actually squishing him, there's not active pressure, but I will just apply light pressure over him. I purposefully cut out the audio of this because I sound absolutely insane. But the goal here was to make this fun for the bird. So I start by applying pressure like that. Then we very quickly do it with a towel. It took a little bit of time. He had to see the towel, that he touches the towel. You'll notice every single time he's getting reinforced with excitement on my part. That's working as a really good reinforcer for him. He eventually steps up into the towel. I wrap him up in the towel. Again, this was multiple training sessions, but you can see right there, if we need to go to the vet and the vet can give him a towel, he steps up, we wrap it up. How much easier is that going to be for your veterinarian, for your vet tech, for you? The bird isn't stressed, the bird isn't screaming, the bird isn't trying to bite everyone in sight, all because the work was done beforehand to get him used to this situation. So if there's other behaviors that you want to do, any other behaviors that you determine are going to be useful for your birds, and it's going to depend on what you want to do with your birds, you can break them down into approximations. Approximations are just the steps that put together individual behaviors. Robin Sullivan from the Leather Elves and I actually did a really, really fun presentation where she trained me to make a sandwich. It took me about 15 minutes to make the sandwich, so I don't know if that is a comment on her ability as a trainer or my ability as an animal. Use your own judgment there. It was actually a lot of fun. We showcased all the different ways that you can interact with your animal, shaping those behaviors, combining and breaking down approximations. And so you guys can look for that online as well, but it definitely helps showcase that. Because there's a lot of things that you can do with those approximations. Break them down, combine them, but basically any behavior that you want your animal to do can be broken down into those approximations. And if there's a behavior you don't think is useful, if you walk in and your bird waves or says hi, a lot of people think that's not a useful behavior. But if you're training it, if your bird is learning that you offer a cue, they do the behavior, you reinforce them, you're building that relationship with that bird, you're building a reinforcement history with that bird. That bird now has a better understanding of how training works. Training your bird to open their wings, to wave, to say hi, ultimately benefits you when it comes to training all of the other more useful things. It's going to be useful in syringe training your bird if you wanted to train them to take medications. It's going to be useful if you wanted to do things like the towel training. So if you have any behaviors with your birds, go ahead and use them. But approximations can definitely help with your birds. And here I have not parrots for once. So here I have some of the smartest birds that you will find in this enclosure. There were 2 birds in this enclosure. These are Emu Chicks. So to give you guys an idea of how intelligent Emu Chicks are, one of them dropped a feather, got the feather wrapped around one of its toes, and was not able to get it off. So we had to go, we went to see the vet. It did tighten up a little bit in the 2 hours between when it happened and when the vet was able to get the feather off. So we had to do foot soaks for 10 days to just help that toe heal. And just so you guys know, the toe healed perfectly. That bird is now absolutely obnoxious now, but in a good way. So with these Emu Chicks, they were already trained to go to their food bowl. The first day we started with the blue kiddie pool. Their kiddie pool was placed on the outside of their enclosure with the food bowl placed next to it. They would go closer to it. Once they did that, the kiddie pool was moved inside the enclosure with the food bowl next to it. They would go up to that. Then the kiddie pool was placed on the ground with the food bowl in it. No water, no anything else. They would go into that. Then we started doing the soak. So they were alternating Epsom salt and chlorhexidine soaks to benefit their toes. It doesn't hurt the other one, so it was easier just to train both of those birds to go in there as well. This is day 2 of that training. The first day, the biggest issues I had to go get the kiddie pool specifically for them to do this. Emu are not known for being smart birds. They're actually quite the opposite. But they are trainable. We broke that down into those steps. They were able to do this. And it's really, really fun because the vet was like, well, you need to soak their feet for 10 minutes a day. And somebody else was like, well, how do you do that? Do you just like hold them in the water? It's like, no. So that's one of the fun things about being a professional animal caretaker. The vet is going to tell you, this is what you need to do. And it is my job to figure out how. The vet wants to give medication. I need to figure out what sort of food item that animal is going to take it in. How do I disguise it? Do we need to syringe train the animal? Do we need to train them to take pills? Do we need to do any of those things? But this right here, showcasing, breaking down that behavior with those emu, making a husbandry behavior a completely voluntary behavior for a unintelligent, moderately skittish animal, because as chicks, emu are flighty as all get out. They run before they can even think about what's going on. That's kind of how they run into a little bit of trouble, because they crash into things, they get tangled up in things. And seriously, you dropped one of your feathers and got tangled up in that. That's seriously. But those birds are doing great now because we were able to do that. And afterward, I'm gonna be perfectly honest, the vet got to check up the bird afterward, and they were like, that's really cool. I had no idea how you were gonna do that, but I knew that was gonna be a good idea. So, what if you don't want to be that hands-on? If you have smaller birds, canaries, finches, if you have birds that you're wanting to use for breeding, actively engaging them can be stressful on them. It can also be a deterrent for if you have breeding birds and you're actively interacting with them, you can sometimes have a negative impact on their breeding. In that instance, we're going to look at a practical approach. You're going to want to manage them and make sure that everything is going to be done as easily as you can in that scenario. So, this is one of my favorite things to show. This is actually my walkthrough aviary where we have kids go through and interact with birds. So in the top right, that's my nephew Gabe. He is 1.5 in that photo and calmly, happily interacting with parakeets. This next photo is someone shared that on our social media of their kids interacting with the birds in our walkthrough aviary. And I'm gonna have a minor soapbox moment. This right here, to me, is what the future of aviculture needs to include. It's really important for us to learn how to take care of our animals, the medical aspects of taking care of our animals, providing proper husbandry, training, breeding. But if we are not doing the part of actively engaging the next generation and getting them interested in interacting with and taking care of animals, we are not doing everything we can to ensure the continued care of our animals. I'm not going to be here forever, but if I can inspire kids to then want to go and take care of those animals, that promotes the future of that. And seriously, look at those faces. That is joy. That is just sheer excitement for that interaction with those animals. These birds were trained to go to people, so they're not what you would necessarily consider pet animals. I didn't want them to be pet animals. They're not trained to step up. They're not trained to do a lot of those things because I was very, very concerned that in that situation, I'm gonna have birds that just jump into people's purses and wanna go out. So they are wild to an extent. They are conditioned to know that people have those food items, that it's going to be a calm place for them to go. They love landing on the kids, but then as soon as the kids are out of food, the birds move on to the next person. That aviary is going to be about 1,000 square feet. It's 16 feet tall at the center. So my birds are able to actively fly in there. It's a lot of fun when I get people who breed birds come in there and they're like, why are your birds so heavy? Because they have muscle tone. They're having to work. But, what am I hearing?
Birds.
Oh.
Real birds.
Yeah, caves are kind of going out there.
Amazingly enough, if I'm at work and I can tone out everything, but as soon as I hear one, I'm like, this doesn't fit in this situation. Something's wrong. So birds that don't want to be handled can still be appropriately managed. I explained to you guys we've had issues with hurricanes, with flooding. Where Blessington Farms is, it's actually a flood zone. We have the Brazos River that comes from the north. It goes to the west of us and then cuts back to the south of us. So if that river floods, it just cuts through the farm. During Hurricane Harvey, we had about 4.5 feet of water on the farm. So in those situations, I have a couple of days notice to grab up and evacuate my animals because I want to make sure they're all safe. How do you do that with birds that don't step up in a space where they can fly 16 feet in the air? So here we just took the basic, the wire cage that I know every single person has had at some point in their life. I'm going to be perfectly honest, they keep finding me. I keep trying to get rid of them, and then I go back into a room and I'm like, how did I get 2 more? I swear those cages are self-propagating. But so I just took one of those cages and I flipped it upside down so that the doors fell open because this was going to be one of the instances where gravity worked in my favor. And I took a bowl with a lip and hung it on the outside of it so the birds could go there to land for food. The photo that you see on the left is the very first day of doing that. So you can see those green-cheeked conures are landing on the cage, they're landing on the bowl. A couple of them went inside that cage. The bowl on the photo on the right was day 2. Those green-cheeked conures are now all going into that cage. So with a catch cage set up like that, I can go in there, I can set a bowl of food, the birds all go in there, I close up the doors, I can then easily evacuate them. That takes me 3 minutes versus trying to catch. There are, of the different species, add everything together, in the vicinity of 100 birds in that enclosure. Netting and grabbing up each one of those individually would be a nightmare and could be a potential health hazard to them, to me, and to the other animals, because if I have to spend that much time grabbing up each of those individual birds, that takes away the time that I have to move and do things with some of my other animals. Again, I sometimes have very, very limited amounts of time to be able to move these animals, so planning it definitely helps me out there. Now here we've got a couple of other things. The cage on the right, you can see that is our off-site cage. This place doesn't flood. So I can take a modular caging system, so like what you see on the left, those are going to be attached into our rooms with clips that I disconnect, pop them in a van, and drive them over to where I can then attach them to that facility. The enclosure in the middle, that is the toucan enclosure. What you can't see there, the flight cages that I need to transport my toucans. They're 6 feet long. Those are going to be mounted directly to the back of that enclosure. Remember what I said about making sure your crates are accessible? If they're not accessible, you're not going to be able to use them that well. That even applies to birds that you're not actively handling. Having the ability to grab up my toucans to easily transport them makes all the difference in the world. The photo on the left, that's actually from one of my friend's aviaries. He has a lot of different breeding birds. You can see his lorikeets in there right now. That setup is going to be designed to have that flap that he can open. He can go through, change food and water, go down the row and do all of those birds. He wants to try to minimize the time that he is in with those birds so that he's not putting undue stress on them. And with lorikeets, with nectar feeders, and especially nectar feeders in Houston heat, he is having to change out that nectar multiple times a day so that it is not, drying out, so that it is not becoming an attractant to pests. So having a setup where he can very quickly get in and out to do those things helps him keep the stress off of his bird, helps him keep pests off of his bird. So there's a lot of different things that can be useful for. So out of all of this, there's just a couple of things that you want to remember. The first one is do your homework. There are a lot of things that are possibilities, and you're not going to know what they are if you're not looking around to see what's possible. You need to know things about your bird. You need to know things about your setup. You need to know things about how other people are training their animals. And don't just look at birds. There are other things that are useful. I have a pair of Dromedary Camels that I have trained the same way you would train elephants. They are completely voluntary interaction. Texas A&M University, who is our veterinarian for them, actually posted a photo of them participating in a voluntary blood draw while the camel's just sitting there. Like, this is wonderful. And they use that as a teaching moment for other people about the socialization and training that is needed for animals like camels, which can be opinionated, we'll just say that. They can be a little unruly, they can be a little bit problematic, but with that appropriate socialization, that works really, really well for them. And that's not the way that you would typically train camels. So drawing from other sources of inspiration, training, conditioning, getting your animals used to things, it's just going to help you overcome a variety of obstacles. We talked about the stress, we talked about the medical issues, we talked about being able to have your birds breed. Depending on what you want to do with your birds will determine what obstacles you are facing, but several of these approaches should be useful for you in your individual in your individual circumstances to make that go a little bit better. Just prioritize what you need to do to make that happen for you, for your individual birds. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of really good resources available that are a great way to help. This is my shameless plug for Parrot Festival. It is in January in Houston every single year. It is a great way to continue your education on taking care of your birds. We have things like conservationists, trainers, nutritionists, veterinarians come in to just showcase every single different thing that goes into taking care of parrots. If you would like some other resources, I've actually created the High Redbird YouTube channel where I showcase things like toy tutorials, training tutorials, different ways for you to think about interacting with and taking care of your birds. Because at the end of the day, the goal should be to enjoy your animals. And if we can take some of that stress out of it, if we can make it a more enjoyable experience, I think you and your animals are both going to benefit. So with that being said, do we have any questions?
I was wondering, for target training and step up, step down training, how much work and repetition you feel it takes for like a younger bird to be able to learn those things. Like, what would you recommend for the amount of time and repetition each day a person should plan for?
So I'm going to start with the obvious, it depends. One thing that I encourage for especially new bird owners when you're doing things like that, I do what I call coffee training sessions because I make myself a cup of coffee every morning. If I didn't, several people would probably die every week. While that is happening, I use that as an opportunity to do a really, really quick training session with my bird. I'm not fully awake, so I'm not, again, training my bird to do algebra, but we're working on basics of things like step up, step down onto a station, target training. And we're doing that every single day. So it's not going to be that there is a set number of, if you do 6 training sessions with your bird, they're gonna have a really good handle on this. But instead, I'd say it's more of a finding the mentality of how can I work this into being a normal part of my day? Because training, like we talked about earlier, is happening whether or not you are planning it and whether or not you are conscious of it. So if you can find a way to make sure you are interacting with that bird and doing things on a more regular basis, so 3 minutes every morning while getting your coffee, you're definitely going to be in a much better place than if you didn't. One thing I encourage people, it's what I do with my dog. Every single doorway we go to, my dog has to sit, he has to hold that until I release him to then go through the door. And when you start doing that, you realize how many times do we go through a door every single day? If I take him out just in the morning and the afternoon, that's 4 separate small training encounters, because we go in, we come back in the morning, we go in, or we go out, come in the afternoon. Finding those little ways, I think, is going to be the most useful way to make sure that you're having that really, really good interaction with your bird. It's going to depend on where your bird is starting. If they are, a younger bird, Widget, I've been working with him since he was 2 days old, so he's really, really comfortable with me. If you have a bird that, is a rehomed bird that had been bounced around to a couple of different homes, that's obviously going to have a impact on how long it's going to take, what their overall capacity is going to be. But finding a way to make those short training sessions, they can all do it. It's just a matter of what you're willing to put into it. Did that answer the question? Okay. Yes.
So how do you go about getting a small, slightly flighty bird to teaching them to step up?
Okay. Okay. Read just the question. How do you go about getting a small, flighty bird to step up? So, one of the things that you get familiar with if you work in a zoo field is, I have a very small, flighty bird that I want to step up. Why? Why do I want that bird to step up? Does it need to step up? Because in a zoo scenario, there are birds that are going to be exhibit birds only. They are there for people to see. They are, potentially endangered birds. They are potentially, they're just things for people to see. There are birds that are going to be ambassador birds that people are actively interacting with. There are birds that are going to be presentation birds that, the bird works really well for me, but I wouldn't necessarily trust someone that the bird doesn't know to go and interact with it. So figuring out what you need to do with your bird, I would say, is the first step. Is it in the best interest of that bird to learn to step up? And you may find that it's not, that you can train it with target training. So that's why I showcase those behaviors in that order. See what you can start with. If your bird is getting a little bit of a step up, if you can occasionally get it, you can start with working there. But if you can never get a step up, go back a step. Start with the target training, working with your bird to target, building that relationship with them. If they won't target outside of their cage, try it with that bird inside of their cage. If they're not willing to target for you, then you need to take a step back from that. Maybe your bird just needs to offer being calm as a behavior. So if you can stand up by the cage, the bird sits there and it's calm, you can reinforce that, and that may be where you need to start. So that is how I would shape that out, plan those approximations. But the first thing I would say you need to do is figure out, is there a reason why you particularly want this bird to do one particular behavior? Or is there a better way to manage that bird?
Okay, because I've been working with them, it's I've been able to start putting my hand in and having Bill over here, and he now steps up onto my hand.
Okay, so it sounds like you're getting the start of that step up. So it's, again, just going to be doing those small, regular training sessions and building it. The other benefit you get out of recording your training sessions, there are going to be times as an animal trainer where you just have a bad day. It's like, why do I even do this? I'm not making any progress. I am a horrible person and everything hates me. And then you go back and you watch your videos and you realize in 2 months, we have gone from an animal that was completely terrified of people, would fly to the back of the cage, and it is now interested in me. It is calm in me. It is coming up to me. It is offering me behaviors. No, it is not everything that I wanted in my wildest dreams yet, but we have made so much progress, and that'll definitely help give you heart and then move forward with whatever else you want to train.
No, yeah, he now comes to the front of the cage.
Awesome. Yes.
What if you have multiple birds and you want to give a command like step up, and you're working with one particular bird, but the other bird is there too, and you're giving the command to one particular bird at a time.
Okay.
And you don't want the other bird to, to hear the command and not have to act.
Okay. Oh, is that Georgia saying I'm going too long? Okay. Who's surprised? There's a couple of different things that you can do there. So, and I'm going to have questions. and I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. It's going to be a different setup versus if you have those birds both in the same cage versus if you have those birds both out of their enclosure. One thing I like to do with working with multiple birds, their names get used as part of their cues. So instead of just step up, it's Grayson, step up, Mika, step up, because we know our birds learn their names. They're very, very intelligent, so they can learn which one you're talking to. And if you have a situation where Grayson and Mika, if I wanted Grayson to step up, and I said, Grayson, step up, and Mika steps up, I'm not going to reinforce that. I'm not going to try to build that, but then if Grayson steps up, I'm going to reinforce that. And that question again becomes, what is the reinforcer for your animal? Because just like the Slim Jim doesn't work for Susanna, sometimes the food reinforcer isn't what is motivating your animal. Sometimes they just want that attention. So finding a way that you're only giving them that attention in those particular instances is going to help you. With some birds, I have a particular order that I'm training them to do things in. I'll work with a particular bird first, because if I don't, they're going to have an attitude, and it's a little bit more stressful on me and a little more stressful on the bird later on. So, am I done with questions?
So Jack, on behalf of the American Federation of Aviculture,
I'm done with questions.
let me present you with this small token of our appreciation. Thank you for your work and for being here today. And Jack will be here for the rest of the conference, and you can ask him all kinds of questions.
Can I just mention one thing?
Okay.
Real quick? Jack has a 15-minute video on YouTube as to how to build a station training platform that includes a hook for a toy. I know nothing about walking into Home Depot. I managed to write down all of the parts. He walks you through it little by little, and I successfully made one. And then I was also able to use it for things like cow training and different things. So it's not just the station. So, and it was a lead under $20, I think is what you say at the beginning of the presentation. So 15 minutes video, write down what you need, go to Home Depot or whatever, is great. I don't know how to build the darn thing.
Well, and then, okay, so this will tie to the questions as well. So there's a lot of videos there, there's a lot of tutorials. If there's anything you guys would like to see more of, or if you have friends who would like to know more of that, you can send messages there. There's also a Facebook group for things like that. So you can pose questions there. It really was designed just to be a resource for people. I'm gonna be honest, that was my quarantine project because I didn't have anything else to do and I got tired of talking to goats. So I set that up, and I think a lot of people have told me they've really benefited from it, so I certainly hope it can be useful for you guys as well, and thank you all so much.
Thank you, Jack.
Oh.
Would you like me to stop this?
You get a reinforcer you can actually use.